Good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you might be. My name is Kevin Michael Grace, and this is the KMG show. Sorry about the lateness, not my fault. YouTube was hanging. I thought I'd start by reading something from Alistair McIntyre's book, After Virtue, which I am going to discuss on the book club on Friday. I thought it was apropos to our situation today. Imagine that the natural sciences were to suffer the effects of a catastrophe. A series of environmental disasters are blamed by the general public on the scientists. Widespread riots occur, laboratories are burnt down, physicists are lynched, books and instruments are destroyed. Finally, a know-nothing political movement takes power and successfully abolishes science teaching in schools and universities, imprisoning and executing the remaining scientists. Later still, there is a reaction against this destructive movement, and enlightened people seek to revive science, although they have largely forgotten what it was. But all that they possess are fragments, a knowledge of experiments detached from any knowledge of the theoretical context, which gave them significant parts of theories, unrelated either to the other bits and pieces of theory, which they possess, or to experiment. Instruments whose use has been forgotten, half chapters from books, single pages from articles, not always fully legible because torn and charred. Nevertheless, all these fragments are re-embodied in a set of practices which go under the revived names of physics, chemistry, and biology. Adults argue with each other about the respective merits of relativity theory, evolutionary theory, and phlogiston theory, although they possess only a very partial knowledge of each. Children learn by heart the surviving portions of the periodic table and recite as incantations some of the theorems of Euclid. Nobody, or almost nobody, realizes that what they are doing is not natural science in any proper sense at all, for everything that they do and say conforms to certain canons of consistency and coherence, and those contents which would be needed to make sense of what they are doing have been lost, perhaps irretrievably. I think you know what I'm getting at here. That is the state of the academy. That is the state of learning in the West. Now, the universities have not yet been burned down, and the great libraries have not yet been destroyed. That may be coming. But what we have seen is the collapse of rigor in the academy, certainly from the 1960s, and the introduction of totally bogus disciplines such as Black studies, women's studies, queer studies, etc., and the use of techniques such as structuralism and the like to totally denature any ideas of the truth or of inquiry, etc., etc. I mean, when one, I'll be getting to this a little later, but one looks at the people who, say, are hired by the New York Times or the Washington Times, and these people have university degrees. Sometimes, pretty big ones from famous universities, but they're stupid people, and they're ignorant as well. But what's the big story of today? The big story is today, white women. Don't you just hate them? There is a woman at the Washington Post, and her name is Karen Itea. Yes, her name is Karen. And I'm reading here from Steve Saylor. She tweeted on June the 28th, "The lies and tears of white women half rot. The 1921 Tulsa Massacre, the murder of Emmett Till, exclusion of Black women from feminist movements, 53% of white women voting for Trump. White women are lucky that we are just calling them Karens and not calling for revenge." This tweet was subsequently deleted, but the internet never forgets, as they say. This woman is described as global opinions editor, writing on international affairs and social issues. Her education at Northwestern, a BA in communication studies, a minor in African studies, and at Columbia University, a master's in international affairs. Now, far be it from me to say that Karen Ataya is an affirmative action graduate, an affirmative action hire. But a BA in Communication Studies and a minor in African Studies at Northwestern does not exactly suggest an academic high flyer. Ataya is the global opinions editor at the Washington Post, where she commissions and edits commentary on global issues from a variety of international writers. She misspelled Emmett Till in her tweet, and she misspelled Karen's. She put superfluous apostrophe in there. Later, we see a tweet from her. I have never felt so personally attacked by a meme. These white men are not dangerous. Me, also me. And what is this? Some Disney thing with some white woman and some, I don't know, Indian man. Oh, yeah. Yeah, here's another one from her. This is from June the 6th. Black people are exhausted. We are asked to write, speak, educate, guide, and soothe folks about racism and sexism, draining our energy and time with little to no support or pay, all while traumatized, exclamation mark. So, pay Black people, exclamation mark. My reparations Venmo is Karen Ataya. Going back to her earlier tweet, exclusion of Black women from feminist movements. Well, she's lying about this. Either, she's lying or she's ignorant. Going back to the 1970s, at least in my country, there was a woman called June Callwood, a legendary Canadian journalist, unfortunately a white woman. And she was the leader in rape crisis centers, shelters for women in Toronto. And she was publicly humiliated by a group of Black women claiming the usual, there's no room for Black people, this is all white, etc., etc. It's not true. The Black women have been saying this for decades. We have no voice, they say, screaming so that no one else can hear. The 1921 Tulsa Massacre, which suddenly is one of the greatest events in American history, is not exactly what is being presented in the media and on television. They started it. Let's put it that way. Black people are exhausted. No, they're not exhausted. Obviously, they're not exhausted because exhaustion results in a, how would I say, people being effete. They don't do very much. These women are clearly, and men are clearly exhilarated. I have never asked Karen Ataya or anyone of her ilk to write, speak, educate, or soothe me about racism and sexism. In fact, this is being pushed down our throats, whether we like it or not, all with little to no support or pay. Well, given that Karen here is an editor at the Washington Post, I suspect that she is rather well paid. She had earlier written last year regarding the heinous attack on Jussie Smollett, yet another reminder that Trump's ascendance and the resulting climate of hate has meant that lives have been increasingly at stake since 2015. Smollett could have been killed by those thugs screaming MAGA. Let that sink in. Now, let's see. White women are lucky that we are just calling them Karens and not calling for revenge. This is getting very close to what's known as eliminationist language. And in fact, we're seeing a lot of eliminationist language about these days, but it's all directed at white people. And so I suppose that's okay then. It is, look, the only way that this situation is going to turn around is when the Beckys, if you like, or the Karens, if you like, realize that the mob is coming for them. Let's see. Karen Ataya tweeted last year, see how quickly we have moved from two powerful white women, Maureen Dowd and Speaker Pelosi, helping each other to attack women of color over a nice box of chocolates, to the president telling them to leave the country. I wonder what you would have against Maureen Dowd. Maureen Dowd is kind of like an Uber Karen. scolding everyone from the pages of the New York Times for decades about how horrible America is. And here she talks about a Maureen Dowd, Speaker Pelosi, Donald Trump axis of sheeval. This woman sounds unhinged, absolutely unhinged. But of course, that is no bar to being a global opinions editor at the Washington Post. American? No, she isn't actually. Well, she was born here, perhaps an anchor baby. She is of Nigerian and Ghanaian origin. And of course, as far as she's concerned, the history of America began the day her parents showed up in that country. There was this angry Korean woman. What was her name? Sarah Jong, I think that's her name, who, when she was appointed to the editorial board of the New York Times a couple of years ago, and she had expressed joy at the thought of white people dying or hurting old white people. There was a lot of comment that this is inappropriate. We've moved past that. It's perfectly acceptable to hate white people, to call for their extinction, but especially to hate white women. Oh, and I suppose that she's complaining about death threats and the like, because they always do, whether they get them or not, because they're fearless. They're exhausted, but they're fearless. Who's another white woman in trouble? Well, that would be J.K. Rowling, author of the Harry Potter novels. And there's a Canadian connection here, because of course there is. There's a monopoly in book sales, or very close to a monopoly in book sales, by a company called Indigo, which is run by a woman called Heather Reisman. And Indigo swallowed up Chapters, which had previously put out of business all the independent book chains in Canada. Chapters, Indigo, they sell a lot of candles in there, stuff like that. As I say, after having destroyed the book business in Canada, they decided that books aren't cutting it. Let's bring in a bunch of candles and fancy pens and that sort of thing. Things that you post out, refrigerator magnets, etc. This is from Fresh Daily. Indigo criticized J.K. Rowling this week for her seemingly transphobic comments, and the Canadian bookstore wasn't shy about it. They called Rowling out by name in front of more than 365,000 followers. Interestingly, Indigo is not on Twitter. They're on that social media outlet that women prefer. In the Post, Indigo says that it stands firmly and positively with the transgender community. I see that transgender has been capitalized. It is disappointing to us that J.K. Rowling, an author we admired and supported, they supported J.K. Rowling. Considering J.K. Rowling is one of the few figures in recent years to actually sell a lot of books, it would seem more like, especially considering their monopoly status, that J.K. Rowling has been supporting Indigo and not the other way around. The identities of all transgender people must be respected without question or judgment. The Canadian bookstore was likely responding to Rowling's remarks on Twitter earlier this month, in which the Harry Potter author shared an article and took issue with the use of the words people who menstruate. I'm sure there used to be a word for those people, Rowling wrote in a tweet. Someone help me out. Wumban, Wimpund, Woomud. Despite mounting backlash, Rowling followed up by criticizing the idea that someone's biological sex isn't real. And I'm sure you're familiar with the controversy. Of course, Indigo could make it easier on themselves by simply not selling her books anymore. But then I guess I wouldn't I guess they wouldn't make the money anymore. I've been informed by a person that I know who has connections to the Harry Potter community that the empire is coming to pieces. That and it is an empire. There's hundreds, thousands of ancillary products which are associated with Harry Potter. And the woke people hate Harry Potter now because of J.K. Rowling. And so this stuff isn't going to be sold anymore. Of course, J.K. Rowling is actually a billionaire. She doesn't need the money. And I suppose that is one of the reasons why she has been so forthright about this, that she hasn't yet groveled to the mob. Rowling ran into some embarrassment this weekend. Let's see. This is from the AV Club, which I used to read a lot, and I've been avoiding for several years because it is absolutely unreadable now, because it's just pause, pause. Have you got your daily pause yet? No, you need more pause. This is from someone called Alison Shoemaker. Happy Monday. Have you gotten an enthusiastic start to your week? Paid a bill? Called your senator? Planned a meal or two? If so, you're in good company, because J.K. Rowling, too, has already checked a box off her to-do list. She's already completed her weekly bout of disappointing people who love her books through a potent combination of bigotry and pettiness. That's a terribly written sentence. They love her books through a potent combination of bigotry and pettiness. You want to put that last bit at the beginning, not at the end. This isn't one of those grammatical complaints. Everyone knows what she means. No, actually, people could quite reasonably suggest that what the author is trying to say is that anyone who likes J.K. Rowling books are doing so through a potent combination of bigotry and pettiness. The Independent reports that Rowling has deleted a tweet praising fellow author Stephen King for being one of the men who stood up when they didn't need to after the Cujo author. Is that the Stephen King novel that you would choose to identify him by? Really, Allison? After the Cujo author voiced his support of trans women, the interaction came after Rowling, who just can't stop talking about her shitty views on trans issues, tweeted a quote from late feminist writer Andrea Dworkin. Ugh. A tweet that was itself a response to a British politician who accused her of using her experience with domestic abuse to promote discrimination against the trans community. She had tweeted, when so-called leftists, like whoever this person is, demand that we give up our hard-won sex-based rights, they align themselves squarely with men's rights activists. To both groups, female trauma is white noise, irrelevance, or else exaggerated or invented. She had earlier written, Andrea Dworkin, again, wrote, men often react to women's words, speaking and writing, as if they were acts of violence. That's what they call projection. Sometimes men react to women's words with violence. It isn't hateful for women to speak about their own experiences, nor do they deserve shaming for doing so. So anyway, someone got back to Stephen King. You should address the TERF tweet by telling us, constant readers, if you believe trans women are women. And yes, he barked on cue. Trans women are women. So she deleted her tweet praising King. Let's see. Alison Shoemaker concludes, to paraphrase a certain book series, remember, if the time should come when you have to make a choice between what is right and what is easy, simply delete the tweet in a snit and keep on digging that hole. I want to see how far this is going to go. I want to see how far to the right they can push J.K. Rowling. Oh, and there's a coda to this story. If you want to support Alphabet People Youth, consider donating to GLSEN, which promotes anti-bullying initiatives and gay-straight alliances. Oh, gay-straight alliances, yes, pedo hotbeds in schools nationwide. And the Trevor Project, which operates a confidential hotline staffed by trained counselors who provide crisis intervention and suicide prevention stories. This controversy is not about gay youth, but got to drag them in there anyway. I guess there's still still Pride Month, right? Even though we haven't heard very much about it, we know who's at the top of the totem pole, and it isn't the gays. The trannies are closer to the top. Oh, another white woman who is in very serious trouble is Wendy Mesley. I suppose unfamiliar to most of my American viewers, but she is the queen bee of the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation and has been for decades. She was suspended because of her use, apparently twice, of the dreaded N-word. And as far as anyone has been able to tell, she had referred to a book by the FLQ, a terrorist bestseller in French and English in Canada in the early 70s by Pierre Valliere. And I'm not going to read the title because I do not want to be tossed off the air. And the woman who squealed on her, the snitch, is called Imani Walker. Let's see. This is from the CBC itself. A black journalist who was on the call in which Wendy Mesley, host of the CBC news program The Weekly, used the N-word when preparing a program on anti-black racism, took to Twitter to speak out following an internal CBC investigation into the matter. Imani Walker is currently an associate producer with CBC Radio's Metro Morning Show in Toronto, but was working on The Weekly at the time of the editorial meeting in early June, at which Wesley used the N-word. She went public a day after CBC said Mesley had been disciplined for that incident and another that happened last September and involved Mesley referencing the title of a 1968 book by Quebec journalist Pierre Valliere that included the N-word. The public broadcaster did not specify what disciplinary action Mesley would face. The veteran journalist had already been suspended from hosting The Weekly on June 9th, and the rest of the show's season was canceled June 12th. Okay. CBC spokesperson Chuck Thompson said Friday that CBC respects Imani Walker's decision to make a public statement and can only imagine how hard this experience must have been for her. Yes, I can only imagine what it would be like to work at the CBC and have people peering out of their offices to see whether you're coming down the hall, to freeze in terror as she walks by, thinking, am I going to be next? Is she going to snitch on me? Is she going to squeal on me? We encourage all employees to bring any concerns to either management, HR, or their union rep. Once flagged, issues are addressed with respect, thoroughly, and in a timely manner, said CBC spokesperson Chuck Thompson. And that's what you want in a journalistic organization. You want the spirit of the Stasi. In her most recent statement, I guess this would be, her second or third apology? Posted on Twitter Thursday, Mesley acknowledged that while she initially said she was quoting another journalist when she used the N-word earlier this month, she had in fact not quoted the other journalist directly, but had used the full N-word, not the abbreviated version the journalist had used. This is the level to which we have been reduced. Once again, this word, our modern tetragrammaton, taboo word, which apparently reduces black people to either weeping hysteria or induces murderous and quite justified rage in them, is a word which they hear or say 100 times a day, every day, maybe a few hundred. Let's see. I now realize that my abuse of the word was harmful. I hurt my colleagues, my team, and the CBC. For that, I am deeply sorry and ashamed. Words are powerful, and when people of power use certain words, we abuse our privilege. Wow. I guess Wendy didn't put away anything for retirement. Is that what it is? Because I don't like Wendy Mesley, and I can't say that I've ever liked her, but I genuinely feel for her. This is just so wretched. I'm deeply sorry and ashamed. Yes, another story from the Washington Post. Sorry, the National Post. I want to read the tweets from Imani Walker. White journalists who think it's okay to say N-word in any context speak with an undeniable amount of privilege and power that Black, Indigenous, and POC journalists will never have. Saying N-word is sufficient. It's a term BIPOC journalists use no matter the context. Oh, they never say it out loud in full? Got to drop that G, of course. Never? Never say it? I think they do. Using a racial slur at work re-traumatizes BIPOC and weaponizes the space, Bolsheviks language, to protect someone like Wendy. Oh, Wendy. She doesn't even get a surname. She's just a Wendy. While leaving BIPOC journalists to feel unseen, unheard, and unsafe. Well, I don't know about unsafe, but you're not unseen and you're not unheard. Quite the contrary. For an industry that prides itself on transparency and accountability, the power dynamics are unethical. I've stayed quiet until now, but it's important to note there was disciplinary action because I was on the call. There was a Black person present to hold people accountable. Yep. I guess that's the primary job, and a wearying, exhausting job it is for Black people to hold the rest of the world accountable. Yet this is not the first or perhaps last time a white journalist at CBC has said N-word. I'm shocked. I'm just absolutely shocked. Now that the formal investigation is over, I can conclude the only way for Canadian media to progress is to have BIPOC journalists in the room to hold their white counterparts accountable. The raw truth matters. Every BIPOC at the table matters. Invest in them, listen to them, or else, I guess, is the clear implication. And I think that every white person at the CBC should be fired and replaced with a proud, strong Black woman of color. And of course, that way the CBC could get its ratings down from the thousands per program to the hundreds, or maybe even the tens. There's not a single CBC program that ranks in the top 20 in Canada. Yeah, that's right. That's how irrelevant the CBC is. Oh, who else is apologizing? Elaine or Lainey Lou. She apologized for over a decade of monstrous remarks that were racist, misogynistic, homophobic, and transphobic, not to mention fat shaming. They left out fat shaming. Jessica Mulroney was canceled. Her husband, Ben Mulroney, was canceled. Wendy Mesley, pretty much canceled. Lainey Lou, not canceled. I suppose it helps to be a person of color, or Chinese in her case. From across the Atlantic, Miss England race row. 2 former winners say they have been reprimanded. By whom? How? For criticizing the reigning title holder who said humans deserve coronavirus. Any guesses as to who the reigning title holder might be? Well, her name is Basha Mukherjee. It's an old Yorkshire family, I think. She is a doctor for the NHS in Lincolnshire. She apologized after posting that humans were evil and deserved COVID-19. A Miss England beauty queen, this is from the Mail, is threatening to sue 2 former winners, claiming she is a victim of cyberbullying. Mukherjee has demanded a public apology from Alicia Cowie, 20, and Katrina Hodge, 33, for remarks they made about her. Her solicitor claimed their criticism on Facebook had incited untruthful, racist, and hurtful slurs from others against her. The row stems from a post under Dr. Mukherjee's name about a pregnant elephant which was killed after eating a pineapple filled with firecrackers. The junior NHS doctor allegedly wrote, "When you guys are crying why Corona happened to us, this is why. How dare we humans even walk this earth with the evil inside us? We deserve Corona." It's okay, so this woman has very strong feelings about animal rights. And she's also a physician. Why is she entering a beauty contest. So leave aside the absurdity of someone being called Mukherjee being named Miss England. Let's see, Miss Cowie, who is Miss England 2018, hit out as an apparent frontline doctor. I think your statement of us deserving coronavirus is disgusting. Yeah, people might ask, if she had any contact with coronavirus patients, because would that be appropriate? And Miss Hodge, Miss England 2009, wrote, young children have died, nearly 50,000 in the UK, and you are saying we deserved it for this? Dr. Mukherjee, 24. How does one get to be a doctor at the age of 24? I'm really kind of curious about that. Most people enter university at 17 or 18. Well, it's a 3-year degree in Britain. I don't know. Maybe she's a very fast worker. She apologized for the comments, but trolls targeted her. What, for saying that the human race deserves coronavirus? I can't imagine. And she complained about harassment to police. Officers are not believed to be pursuing it as a crime. But an email sent by the doctor's lawyer to Ms. Cowie and Ms. Hodge threatened legal action if they did not apologize within days, saying they had caused her extreme anxiety and distress. I hope she tells them to get stuffed. Ms. Hodge, who lives in Brighton and is a mother of 2, also claims she was forced to take the day off work after receiving a warning from Miss England director Angie Beasley. In the email, the director claimed, I wanted to let you know that the persistent remarks that you and others have posted across social media are being used as evidence for bullying and harassment. I'm sure that I do not need to remind you, Miss World and Miss England, most important ethic is to care and support others. What, are they going to strip her of her title retroactively? I'm looking at a picture of Alicia Cowie, and she is a exceedingly good-looking woman, I must say. Have you noticed in recent years that the women in beauty pageants are nowhere near what anyone would describe as being beautiful? Of course, I also remember when cheerleaders used to be pretty, which gives you an idea of how old I am. Miss Hodge said, I woke up with an email of lies. Miss England felt like Basha was being cyberbullied and harassed by this. I couldn't concentrate on anything before this incident. I've never spoken to her before. I was just offering advice. They were apparently going to go to the police, and it left me feeling like I had a dark cloud over my head. Go to the police. Because one woman said that another woman's statement that a deadly disease was obviously warranted because people are evil, that she complained about this and didn't think that it was appropriate statement for a Miss England to say. You know, I could say that, that Britain is doomed, but of course my own country appears to be doomed as well. I suppose it's sort of a race to the bottom between Canada and Britain. Let's go to the chat, see what's going on there. Hang on. Click the white run here. David Wright asks, how are the people with diabetes doing? Well, I don't know. I suspect there'll be studies coming out in the next few years, and this will be buried in footnotes of all of the tens of thousands of people who are not in their 80s who died needlessly because of the panic that set in amongst health professionals. Francis, YouTube might not take kindly to the title, but I dig it. It's a joke, right? I don't know. Thought KMG got axed too. Well, I'll be getting around to the axing a little later. There's so much news these days. Remember when it was just COVID-19 all the time? That's all there was. Now there's just so much news. It's all bad news, really. But there is a lot of it. David Wright, doors open. It must signify something. Blink twice, Kevin, if I'm onto something. No, it is open because I have the apartment to myself today. I normally close the door to prevent extraneous noises from interfering with the broadcast, but there aren't going to be any extraneous noises today. Phlogiston, I love that word. Aslan said, a white Karen tried to take a pic of me at the market, all because of social distancing, 9 feet. This person doesn't like white libtard women. I was walking into a convenience store this morning, and there was an old woman, and she was fussing with a walker. She seemed rather full. She was wearing a mask. And I opened the door for her. And I held it. And it took a while. And I was expecting a thank you. Instead, she said, "You've got to keep your distance." It's rather hard to keep one's distance from someone when one is holding open the door for her. Mike F., the future is female except for the Karens. That's a good point. The future is female if you're a black female, and then I suppose all the other POCs after that. Look, I've written about this before. It's not a secret why so many of these non-white women hate white women so much, particularly blonde women, because they know that in terms of the sexual totem pole that blonde women are at the top, and they are not close to the top. And they don't even bother to hide the fact that this is really sexual jealousy. Aslan says, happy to be a Muslim at this time. Libtards are terrorized by it. Hi, Matt Forney. Dan Allison says, Kevin, they've all gone unhinged. It's like a zombie takeover. Well, of course, every day, no, I'll just repeat something I said some months ago, that I have this terrible feeling that, when I look at the news every day, that I've gone mad, and this can't possibly be happening because it is all so relentlessly stupid, or worse, that I've died and gone to hell, and this is going to be the rest of my life. Mike F. says, Ghana is welcoming African Americans to repatriate there. Wonder if there have been any takers, refugees from police brutality and systemic racism. Don't you know? Danny Rose, how long do we have to wait for trans POTUS? Someone was pointing out today that a great many of these health officials are now trans people. There's the chief officer for Pennsylvania, and that Lincoln County in Oregon, which made masks mandatory, but only for white people. Also, another of that ilk. Jonathan Pohl says they don't want rich blacks to come to Ghana. They don't offer money, land, or jobs paying anything more than $1,000 a month. Plus, they require a clearance letter for work permits. Jim Smith says at the time of Hurricane Katrina, the president of Senegal was offering refugee status to Haitians. Though both are French-speaking countries, there were few takers. I'm a little surprised about that. I suppose that all of the Haitians think they're going to end up in Canada or the United States, and that's probably not unreasonable. Haiti is, without question, one of the very worst places on earth. I don't know much about Senegal, except don't they have the largest Catholic cathedral in the world there? But Senegal must be considerably better than Haiti. Chocokin666 memeing Marcus Garvey back into style. Oh, Jonathan Pohl says you need evidence from your local law enforcement that you have never been arrested. Not being convicted is irrelevant. Richie says, I would argue gender also has a biological basis since the bodies of men and women insist on men and women being providers and nurturers respectively, hardly just a social construction. Well, that used to be the case. Of course, government has stepped in largely to take over the role of men, particularly in the black communities, which have become matriarchies. Mike F. J.K. Rowling on Red Pill Watch. Yes, exactly. All right, talking alphabet today. Coachilango says, KMG, I've always considered you the president of my yacht club for your sober good sense, but the Venetian blinds are making you look like a cosplayer with 3 white stripes. I'm going to be getting a blackout curtain soon. Oh, Tweety Bird says, but of course CBC let John Gomeshi keep his show until he got severely Me Too'd. He was found not guilty, and with good reason, too. This is an absolute, look, he's a disgusting person. But there's a lot of women out there who are looking for disgusting sex, and he provided it. A bunch of these women claimed that, they were just so traumatized that it was the end of their life, and then the emails were discovered. They were sending him emails saying, "Oh, when can we get back together? I miss you so much. I miss being choked," and the like. Once again, I don't talk about this subject much, but here's a tip about sexual intercourse. If you find yourself choking your partner or being choked, you're doing it wrong. Okay, so what else we got? BIPOC. Yeah. I don't know if that is how it is supposed to be pronounced, but that is how I am going to pronounce it. Philip Daniel says, the privilege to be scapegoated for all the world's misfortunes, the power that inheres in being the subject of endless abuse from those that deem themselves inherently superior. This black meme that black women do all the work, I suppose you can meme truths into existence. That is to say, you can internalize it yourself, and you can get society to internalize it. David Wright says, blacks really do have the whip hand. Yes, that's a reference to what Enoch Powell said in 1968. And, of course, it's terribly embarrassing for the British establishment, and even people like Peter Hitchens, who were constantly raving on about what an evil man Enoch Powell was. And not only was what he said true, he understated the case of how awful it was going to be. Richie says, replace every journalist with Joy Reid. Essentially, oh, yes, I'm very much looking forward to that. Jules Roy said, I had to read that book by Valliere at university. It's one of the most famous books to come out of the Quiet Revolution. It's also tiresome, says Professor Paul. Yeah, I suppose it is. But I've always, Muriel Spark wrote that when she came across awful people, at least from a novelist's point of view, she always wanted them to be more and more so, because the laughs just keep on coming. Of course, as I pointed out, I don't really have anything that can be taken away from me, so I'm in a more powerful position, or less vulnerable at any rate, than a lot of the people who say, listen to this show. Okay, Palestinians and Amerindians. I'm not going to get into that because I'm not all that interested in the question, frankly. It's of little interest. I mean, in terms of foreign policy to the United States, it's certainly to Canada. The United States is the economic and military guarantor of the state of Israel. Canada holds no such position. And I can tell you that until about 20, 25 years ago, Israel was barely mentioned in my country. I did a survey. I used to have, there's a tool, a proprietary tool that lets you search the whole media. All the stories from all the papers, I forget what it's called. Someone won't remember what it's called. All serious journalists have it. I used to have it because of the job I was working. And I thought it would be amusing to search the National Post, which is one of Canada's 3 daily national newspapers, to see just how often Israel was mentioned in the National Post. And it turned out there were more references over a period of a year, the latest year. There were more references to Israel in the National Post than there were to the province of Saskatchewan. Philip Daniel says, the wokists are trying to cancel Ibram X. Kendi for writing in his book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, that believing white people are innately inferior is also a form of racism. Yeah, we pretty much, we're getting close to the Committee of Public Safety level. We really are. Emma Nimpton says, "Do you have roommates?" Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Okay. Jules Roy said most of the good-looking women in London do indeed have names like Bazia. They are Polish. Yes, I was talking about Decalogue last week. Polish are good-looking women in Poland. No question about it. Someone else asked me a question here. KMG, do you not enjoy a good Haitian mud cookie? Haiti is... they had an earthquake there a few years ago, and they just sit on their hands. They make no effort. They make no effort to improve their own situation. Of course, this is a country that was consecrated to the devil at its founding. First, they killed all of the white people, and then they killed all the mulattoes. Given that the mulattoes represent a racial elite amongst blacks in America, I don't know, they might start to get worried. They might start to get worried because there's a lot of jealousy there. Okay, so so everyone hates Karen, and of course there's a debate on what Karen means, whether Karen is left wing or right wing. But apparently we're all supposed to hate Ken too. And Ken and Karen are the couple, the rich lawyers who live in a palace. It is a palace in St. Louis. And an angry mob on their way to City Hall smashed through the gate, wrecked the gate. This was all private property. We're on the property, howling that they were going to kill this man's dog, and that loading a pistol. And so the couple come out. She's holding a pistol. He's holding an AR-15. And they are completely serious. And suddenly the mood amongst the so-called peaceful protesters became not so peaceful anymore. Not so triumphalist, let's say. Oh, Jerry Taylor says, if I were in that march and these racist lunatics were waving guns at me, I'd like to think I'd rush them and beat their brains in, and I wouldn't apologize it for one goddamn second. You would have been cut down long before then. Long before then. Benjamin Applebaum, right? Oh, God, just that St. Louis mansion was built by the Budweiser family. Boo! Which for decades employed few blacks. It sits on a gated street for the most affluent white residents of a poor and heavily black city. Point being, the guns aren't new. They usually don't wave them around. Benjamin Applebaum is the lead writer on business and economics for the editorial board of the New York Times. It is, well, I don't know. Oh, Jerry Taylor is the president of this Cannon Center. He's part of the Coctopus. I thought they believed in private property. I guess racism is more important than private property. When you see all the people attacking this couple for defending their property, we've gone from defund the police to abolish private property. And I guess since most of these people involved in these street activities, I'm sure the vast majority of them are renters, they would have a problem with people who own private property. Now, the couple later said that they supported Black Lives Matter. And they later claimed, despite copious video evidence, that it was mostly white people who were threatening them, and it was not mostly white people. But discretion is the better part of etc., etc. Oh, so who just hates white people? Dr. Priya Yamam Vada Gopal. She doesn't like Brahmins either. Now, she tweeted and then deleted the tweet. I'll say it again, white lives don't matter as white lives. She is at Cambridge University, and she was promoted to professor after this. She is a I'm trying to think of the black theologians or the black theology. There was an evil man a long time ago who invented white people. That's how evil he was. And a particularly shaped skull with an enormous forehead. And this woman reminds me of him. Okay, Dr. Gopal later shared some of the hate speech she had received, including from a man sending her a picture of a noose and writing, "We are coming for you, you N-word loving piece of shit." Yeah, maybe she got some hate mail. Maybe she didn't. She for as long as there's been social media, it has been noted, and there's a meme about this, about women shoveling shit and throwing it over a fence, hurling it over a fence, and take that, patriarchy. And the shit starts to come from the other side, and the woman screams, "Help! Misogyny!" Yeah, I mean, come on. She wasn't advocating the genocide of all white people. She said they were very clearly speaking to a structure and ideology, not people. I would also like to make clear that I stand by my tweets, now deleted by Twitter, not me. My tweet said that whiteness is not special, not a criterion for making lives matter. I stand by that. Well, then why is black a criterion for making lives matter? There's no such thing as uniform blackness. Also, this woman is Indian. She is not black. Stop pretending, Indian people. You are not black. And I know a little bit about, how should I say, your obsession with race and actually what you think of black people. And, you can come across this in places like Trinidad, which has a considerable Hindu minority and a black majority. You see it in places like Guyana as well. Where these people are together, they do not get along together. But the Indians are piggybacking on Black Lives Matter, and I'm waiting for them to be told authoritatively that this isn't going to be allowed anymore. 2 years ago, Professor Gopal wrote, "With deep regret, but with 17 years of consideration behind it, I finally decided on my behalf and of other people of color, Cambridge University, to refuse to supervise any students at King's College. Enough is enough of the constantly racist profiling and aggression by porters." By porters. My attempts to raise, I'm just imagining an interaction between Gopal and a porter at Cambridge University. If only Tom Sharp were still alive. You want to read a funny book about university? Read Porterhouse Blue by Tom Sharp. It's one of the funniest books I've ever read. My attempts to raise this with fellows and with its management, yes, she wants to speak to the manager, verbally and in writing, have failed to elicit any changes. Hundreds of stories abound over the years. Basta. What are you, Italian now, lady? Where you are in a position to tell me if you can't be polite to me at the gate, I can't do any work for you. You should. Polite? I get the impression that Professor Gopal believes that politeness is a white creation designed to oppress BIPOCs. There's a whole tweet storm about this, that she can't get along with porters. Well, it's my understanding that quite a few over the years, university professors have had some difficulty with porters because they're a proud group, the porters, and they don't like being condescended to. And one gets the impression that Professor Gopal is the queen of condescension. Let's talk about a white woman who is not hated, actually. Actually, she is enjoying a strange new respect. And her name is Valerie Solanas. And this is in the New York Times. And it's written by Bonnie Wertheim, who looks like she's 18 years old. Seriously, she looks like she's 18 years old. I have known of Valerie Solanas, for what, 50 years, something like that? Because it's just a remarkable story that Valerie Solanas was a, how would you say, a drifter? She was a lesbian who worked as a prostitute, sex worker, as we say now, who believed that she had written something which was truly revolutionary. And she wanted to get it to famous people. And she managed to get it to Andy Warhol, of all people. And it was called the Scum Manifesto. And SCUM stands for the Society for Cutting Up Men. Now, this sounds like a fake, a troll, a parody. It was not. It very much was not. And Valerie Solanas became a notorious figure when she shot Andy Warhol. And he nearly died. It was a very close run thing. Andy was never the same after that. Never even close to being the same. His skin was white. He was thin and weak and had to wear a wig. And people who knew Andy said that the kind of the joyousness that he had had previous to that was largely gone. But Bonnie Wertheim is writing as part of a series called Overlooked, which is obituaries about remarkable people went unreported. In the New York Times this month, we're adding the stories of important alphabet people, figures. Valerie Solanas, she had no accomplishments, really, except for nearly killing Andy Warhol. And the New York Times, in its wisdom, has decided to make a posthumous heroine of this clearly deranged woman. Because, I don't know. I mean, what's the intersectionality here? She was a woman, okay, and a sex worker, and Andy Warhol was homosexual, or at least certainly drawn in that direction. The crowd at the factory in New York seemed pretty white. Not a lot of diversity there. Maybe that's the reason why you would celebrate Valerie Solanas. I don't know. The New York Times, how about the Manson women? Most of them are dead now. Are there any missing obituaries there? You know, maybe they could make up the difference. I suppose all the, the dead members of the Weather Underground, they got reverent obituaries in the Times. I would be very surprised if they didn't. But no, she was a radical feminist. She was radical, all right. No question about that. And I guess she deserves to be celebrated. I suspect that there's a lot of people who have come pretty much to the end with the New York Times. It's supposed to be the newspaper of record. I mean, I don't like the Washington Post, but the Washington Post is not nearly as aggressively identity politics based as the New York Times. But of course, they did spend how many thousands of words humiliating some woman because she'd worn blackface at a party in an attempt to mock a TV host, Megyn Kelly. Of course, I suppose Tom Tolles, the celebrated columnist, they pretty much finished him off too, because he was insufficiently, bloodthirsty. He had some loyalty to this woman. He didn't want her life ruined because of a foolish party costume. And okay. Let's see. Are there any more people that we can talk about that are being hated for being white or female or both? I'm sure there must be more. I'm sure there must be. Hang on. Let me get back to it here. Okay. I have been predicting for some years, and I don't feel happy that my prediction is coming true. I'll just, let you know. I've been predicting for some years that school children will be taught, maybe they're being taught already, that they have to have sex with people of the same sex, because how can they say this isn't what they want unless they do it? Similarly, they will be told that if you do not have sex with Black people, then you are a racist. I mentioned the Washington Post being less crazy than the New York Times. I'm going to retract that. There's a piece by Damona Hoffman, June 25th. And Hoffman is a writer for Date Lab and host of the Dates and Mates podcast. Among the sea of black squares and list of black businesses to support that flowed through my Facebook feed. It's a terrible lead sentence. Don't they have editors at the Post? Since the death of George... No. How can you tell if it's a terrible sentence if you don't know what it means? Okay, I'll start from the beginning. Amongst the sea of black squares and lists of black businesses to support that flowed through my Facebook feed since the death of George Floyd, one post socked me in the gut. Is it racist if someone excludes a particular race in their dating preferences? Matchmaker Carmelia Ray asked in a Facebook group for love coaches, of which we were both members. Even as a child, I was keenly aware of the piercing stares directed toward my white father and black mother, so I had to answer unequivocally, yes, it's racist. We're seeing a lot of this, how would I say, the bacchanalia that has followed the killing of George Floyd. We're seeing a particular type of female activist who is half Jewish and half black. Sounds formidable. Yeah, it's racist. You don't want to have sex with someone who's black, you're a racist. How is this going to be enforced, by the way? I mean, this could get really, really ugly. Like so many prior actions that Americans are now reevaluating about race, dating preference has to be put under the microscope. Does it now? Racial bias is insidious, only surfacing when someone challenges a societal norm or a personal choice. My industry has allowed daters who claim to be friendly advocates of black people to hide racial bias under the guise of dating preferences for far too long. In my very first session with clients, as they begin the process of identifying their ideal mate, we always discuss racial preferences. It's usually easy to convince them that inner qualities matter more for long-term compatibility than physical characteristics, such as height and weight. Really? I don't believe you. Because we know, and we all know, that right near the top, the attributes that women are looking for are height. That if you're a short man that goes on one of these dating sites, not that I've ever gone on a dating site, you're going to have a problem. You're going to have a problem. Physical attributes such as height and weight. I'm assuming she's dealing with women here and not men. Oh, this woman's fabulous. What she looks like she weighs 200 pounds. Yes, but what about her inner qualities? What do you mean her inner qualities? Like her enormous gut? You see, there's a lot of talk about bullying and how bad it is. People prefer thin people to overweight people. They prefer taller people to shorter people. They prefer pretty or beautiful people to ugly people. But we're being told that these are all social constructs. They are not social constructs. Experiments have been done with newborn babies, showing that newborn babies pay far more attention to stereotypically good-looking people as opposed to those who are not. That's when I bring out the 5 ways, says Ms. Hoffman, a business technique used to explore the cause and effect relationships underlying a particular problem. I begin with a question like, why didn't you check the box for black in your dating preferences? The initial response is usually a surface level reaction like, I've just never dated anyone black before, to which I reply, why? Each answer leads to a deeper question that drives my clients into a challenging self-reflection. As we peel back the layers of the onion, we often find unconscious bias at the core, which has been shaped over time by family, media imagery, and personal experiences. Well, I'm glad she included personal experiences. Again, it's a social construct. In his 2014 book, Dataclysm, oh, boo, groan, hiss, Christian Rudder, co-founder of the OkCupid dating app, published data about its users' hypocritical statements about racial bias. OkCupid bases a user's compatibility on their answers to wide-ranging questions on subjects such as lifestyle and current events. In the book, Rudder says 84% of OkCupid users responded that they would not date someone who exhibited a strong racial bias. Yet based on OkCupid's user data, most of the people at the time were not responding to messages from users of a different race. As a writer for DateLab, I've seen instances of coded racial bias. The application does not ask for racial preferences, but daters might say they have a thing for blondes or list celebrity crushes of only one race. The subtext is crystal clear. I remember years ago, this fellow who worked for me, we were talking about this British show, Have I Got News for You, which I used to watch. And I was talking about, there's a British comedian, pundit, she does various things. Her name is, Veronica Corin. And I said that I quite like her, which I do. She's a very witty, attractive woman. And so the fellow said, oh, well, she's just your type. And I said, my type? What's my type? And he said, blonde, big breasts. And I thought, oh, yes, how very unusual of me. Yeah. No. Yeah, I plead guilty. Those aren't the only women I like, but they are certainly near the top. Francesca Hoagie, love coach. What is a love coach? Seriously? You see the culture of consumption here? You got to hire people. You got to hire people to do this. It used to be you would meet people by chance, or maybe you would be set up by friends or family. No. Then you go to dating services, which you pay for. That's not sufficient. You need love coaches. What was it? 15 years ago, I started hearing this word doula. What is that, a midwife? No, it's not a midwife. Oh, it's someone else you pay? Someone else you pay? But now we have the love coach, and I suppose women can boast to their friends, and imply that they're superior because they have a love coach, and other women will be thinking, why don't I have a love coach? But Francesca, who is black but coaches daters of all races, has found that about 10% of her white clients state a racial preference compared with about 50% of her black clients. What is the racial preference of her black clients? She told me for my black clients, usually the preference is based on who they think will like them. Sure it is. They often don't have the experience of being asked out by white men, so they assume these men aren't interested. Okay, 10% of our white clients state a racial preference. I would say the true figure is probably about 80, 90%. Black women aren't wrong about this perceived rejection. Dataclysm also revealed that black women received the fewest responses of any racial group. Francesca continued, some worry they'll be fetishized by any non-black men who are interested in them. Other times they feel strongly that it's important to have a partner who knows what it's like to be a black, and they don't want to educate anyone about their experiences. They don't? Really? Because everything that I'm hearing in the media, the traditional media and the social media, suggests to me they can't shut up about their experiences. While I can understand the feeling of being burdened by having to explain our culture to a partner, I believe learning from someone you love is the fastest way to bridge the divide between us. But what if you're just not attracted to someone outside of your race? That's hard to defend. No, it isn't. It isn't. Why don't I like this thing? Because I don't. That is good enough. I don't have to defend the fact that I don't like strawberry ice cream, or I don't like green beans, or any of the other things I don't like. I don't have to defend it. I just don't. But you see, what we're getting to here is what I suggested at the very beginning, that white women are going to be forced to have sex with black men. It's coming. It's going to start in the schools, and then it's going to become universal. Oh, why don't you tell us how many black men you've had sex with? None. None? Why are you such a hater? Why are you such a bigot? Why are you such a white supremacist? Obviously, it's coming. I don't think there can be any question about this. Okay. Let's talk about something that was talked about a few years ago, and it sort of disappeared. And that would be Pizzagate. And Pizzagate was the worst, the craziest conspiracy theory that had ever been. And everyone associated with the Pizzagate must be shamed. Joe Scarborough, he seems to feel very strongly about this. He tweeted on June 27th, Facebook and other social media outlets must be liable for the lies they publish and allow to thrive on their platforms. The conspiracy group QAnon is also promoting Pizzagate in private Facebook groups and creating easy-to-share memes on it. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Well, how do we know that it's lies? Anyway, what causes a conspiracy group? Seems to be the Democratic Party is a conspiracy group, because the Democratic Party for years pushed this conspiracy that Trump was in hoc to Putin, that Russia stole the 2016 election. It's all lies. They didn't even bother to follow through with this when it came time to impeach Trump. They couldn't even be bothered. That's how weak it is. But there's a story in the New York Times, and the New York Times is not pleased about what's happened. And this is a story by Cecilia Kang and Shira Frankel. There's not a lot of WASPs that work at the New York Times, is there? I wonder why that would be. Is it these people at the New York Times, they've never known any WASPs? It's ignorance, like the dating, you know? Maybe they should look into that. Pizzagate conspiracy theory thrives anew in the TikTok era. The false theory targeting Democrats, now fueled by QAnon and teenagers on TikTok, is entangling new targets like Justin Bieber. A word about Justin Bieber. It is very strongly rumored, and has been for many years, that Justin Bieber was sent to America at the age of 14 from Ontario to be groomed, as it were, to be groomed to become a superstar. The rumor is that he was groomed, well, that is to say, raped by a famous musician who was his chief mentor. Hateful comments have surged on the social media pages of Comet Ping Pong, a pizza parlor in Washington that is at the center of the debunked Pizzagate conspiracy theory. No, it has not been debunked. I'm sorry. Pizzagate says a lot of things. Some of them are crazier than others, but I will get to that in a minute. Oh, hateful comments at Comet Ping Pong. What could a Comet Ping Pong have ever done to elicit hateful comments? 4 minutes into a video that was posted on Instagram last month, Justin Bieber leaned into the camera and adjusted the front of his black knit beanie. For some of his 130 million followers, it was a signal. In the video, someone had posted a comment asking Bieber to touch his hat if he had been a victim of a child trafficking ring known as Pizzagate. Thousands of comments were flooding in, and there was no evidence that Bieber had seen that message. But the pop star's innocuous gesture set off a flurry of online activity. which highlighted the resurgence of one of the social media's early conspiracy theories. Viewers quickly uploaded hundreds of videos online analyzing Bieber's action. The videos were translated into Spanish, Portuguese, and other languages, amassing millions of views. Fans then left thousands of comments on Bieber's social media posts asking him if he was safe. Within days, searches for Justin and Pizzagate soared on Google, and the hashtag #SaveBieber started trending. Now this is curious. I suspect that the writers of this story, Cecilia Kang and Shira Frankel, know that Justin Bieber got into the entertainment business as a teenager, and a young teenager, not an old elder teenager. And they similarly know of the industrial scale sexual abuse that goes on in the music industry and in Hollywood of both boys and girls. So if Justin Bieber would touch an item of clothing in such a way to suggest that he'd been a victim of the child trafficking ring, wouldn't that be the story and not Pizzagate? Justin Bieber being one of the most famous men in the world. But no, 4 years ago, ahead of the 2016 presidential election, the baseless notion that Hillary Clinton Democratic elites were running a child sex trafficking ring out of a Washington pizzeria spread across the internet, illustrating how a crackpot idea with no truth to it could blossom on social media and how dangerous it could be. In December 2016, a vigilante gunman showed up at the restaurant with an assault rifle and opened fire into a closet. In the years afterward, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube managed to largely suppress Pizzagate. But now, just months before the next presidential election, the conspiracy theory is making a comeback on these platforms, and on new ones such as TikTok, underlining the limits of their efforts to stamp out the dangerous speech out line, and how little has changed despite rising public frustration. The rising public frustration is with what? This time, Pizzagate is being fueled by a younger generation that is active on TikTok, which was in its infancy 4 years ago, as well as on other social media platforms. Driven by these new elements, the theory has morphed. Pizzagate no longer focuses on Mrs. Clinton and has taken on less of a political bent. Its new targets and victims are a broader assortment of powerful business people, politicians, and celebrities, including Bieber, Bill Gates, Ellen DeGeneres, Oprah Winfrey, and Chrissy Teigen, who are all lumped together as part of the global elite. Well, they are. For groups like QAnon, Pizzagate has become a convenient way to foment discontent. The theory has also gone global. While it previously found traction mainly in the United States, videos and posts about it have racked up millions of views in Italy, Brazil, and Turkey. Pizzagate never went away because it encompasses very potent forces, including children's safety and the power of elites, said Alice Marwick, a disinformation expert at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. But now there's so much scaffolding from people who've researched it, it wasn't hard for others to pick it up from there. Pizzagate is reaching a level that nearly exceeds its 2016 fever pitch. In the first week of June, comments, likes, and shares of Pizzagate also spiked to more than 800,000 on Facebook and nearly 600,000 on Instagram. That compares with 512,000 on Facebook and 93,000 on Instagram during the first week of December 2016. The conspiracy has regained momentum even as its original targets, Mrs. Clinton, her aides, and a Washington pizzeria, Comet Ping Pong, are still dealing with the fallout. Hateful comments have recently surged on the Facebook page and Yelp and Google review pages for Comet Ping Pong, where the child trafficking supposedly happened. The pizzeria's owner, James Alefantis, said he had received fresh death threats that caused the FBI to open a new investigation 2 months ago. Pizzagate was born in 2016 on online forums like 4chan and Reddit, where right-wing users and supporters of Trump poured over hacked emails from John Podesta, Mrs. Clinton's senior campaign advisor, looking for evidence of wrongdoing. Some emails referring to Mr. Podesta's dinner plans mentioned pizza. A 4chan participant then connected the phrase cheese pizza to pedophiles, who on chat boards use the initial CP to denote child pornography. Alefantis, who is friends with Podesta's brother Tony, was mentioned in several of the emails that led to internet users to connect his pizza parlor to the conspiracy. Pizza. That's what you get from Podesta's emails. No one is that interested in pizza. You talk about pizza maps. What on earth would be a pizza map? But more on that in a minute. To keep Pizzagate tamped down, the social media companies took other steps. Facebook made it impossible to search for hashtags such as Pizzagate is real. On YouTube, searching for Pizzagate brought up a label that explained the term was part of a false conspiracy as opposed to, a real conspiracy? How do you know that a conspiracy is real? Because if it's a conspiracy that's aimed at powerful people, well, they're going to deny it, say that it doesn't exist. Again, I can't help but mention that in 2003, there was a conspiracy by the government of the United States and the government of Britain, among others, that alleged that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. Also, that Saddam Hussein had been involved in the terrorist attacks on September 11, 2001. Neither of these things were true, but the United States and Britain were led into war by lies. So, yeah, sometimes conspiracy theories are real. A documentary promoting Pizzagate, Out of Shadows, made by a former Hollywood stuntman, was released on YouTube that month and passed around the QAnon community. In May, the idea that Bieber was connected to the conspiracy surfaced. Teenagers on TikTok began promoting both, as reported earlier by the Daily Beast. These young people, a lot of these Bieber fans are going to be terribly interested in gossip, and if they go to the gossip pages, they will learn about the accusations of sexual molestation against, again, the music business and Hollywood. This video was taken down on Wednesday when TikTok removed the hashtag Pizzagate and all content searchable with the term. The same day, Facebook also expunged Pizzagate-related comments under Comet Ping Pong's page after a call from The Times. So we have NBC calling Google to slap down the Federalist and Zero Hedge, and now we have the New York Times calling Facebook to slap down people who want to talk about Comet Ping Pong. I did a podcast on this back in 2016, which is still up, in which I go into it in more detail than I'm going to be able to do here. For Tony Podesta, John Podesta's brother, Pizzagate's revival has opened up old wounds. He had dealt with trolling from conspiracy believers in 2016. Recently, he got a voicemail message from an anonymous caller saying, "Your pizza is ready." It just doesn't go away, Podesta said. They are always 3 steps ahead of the sheriff. Oh, the poor Podestas. They're just so put upon. Just that they're powerless people. Really, I'm going to recommend some stories on this, which appeared at uns.com. One on December the 2nd, 2016, called Pizzagate by Aidan Cassiel, which I think is clearly, obviously, a pseudonym. He begins by saying that in 1997, in an English town of more than 100,000 people, 8 Pakistani men stood at the core of a group involving as many as 300 suspects who abused, gang raped, pimped, and trafficked, by the most conservative estimate, more than 1,000 of the town's young girls for years. The police were eventually accused of not just turning a blind eye, but of participating in the abuse, even supplying the Pakistani gangs with drugs and tipping them off when they heard of colleagues searching for children they knew to be in the gang's possession. Others were afraid of investigating the gangs or calling attention to their behavior because it would have been politically incorrect to accuse the town's ethnic community of such a rampant and heinous crime. In the words of one English writer, fears of appearing racist trump fears of more children being abused. But when this story first broke, guess where it happened? Here's how a blogger writing under their name Mehdad Amanpour tells the story of how the story first started reaching people. Some years ago, a friend sent me a shocking article. It said hundreds of British girls were being systematically gang raped by Muslim gangs. It claimed this was being covered up. I've never had time for conspiracy theories, especially when they look as hateful as those in the article. So I checked the links and sources in the piece. I found an American racist far-right website. I wonder what that might be. VDare, perhaps? And from there, saw the original source was a similarly unpleasant website in the UK. I did a research for corroboration from reputable mainstream sources. I found none. So I wrote a curt reply to my friend. I'd appreciate it if you didn't send me made-up crap from neo-Nazi websites. Some months later, I read the seminal expose of the mainly ethnic Pakistani grooming gang phenomenon by Andrew Norfolk in the Sunday Times. I was stunned and horrified, not just that these vile crimes were indeed happening and endemic, but they really were being ignored and covered up by public authorities and the mainstream media. Yes, for almost 20 years. Years after no one was willing to take them seriously, the far-right blogosphere turned out to be right. Well over 1,000 mostly white girls were being abused by mostly Pakistani gangs, and the authorities were covering it up. Now, he goes on to talk about Pizzagate here, and just the incredible strangeness of the language from these people. In one email, John Podesta is among those being invited to a farm, and the host says, quote, Bonnie will be Uber service to transport Ruby Emerson and Maeve Lusato, 11, 9, and almost 7, so you'll have some further entertainment, and they will be in the pool for sure, unquote. Could that have an innocent explanation? Sure, maybe. But inviting a group of adult men to a gathering and calling young children further entertainment while listing their ages is weird, whether it ends up having an explanation or not. My point is, without getting into the question of sexual trafficking at all, simply what is on the public record about Pizzagate should have destroyed the reputations of a great many people, and yet it hasn't. The FBI has listed a bunch of symbols which are associated with pedophiles and their so-called community, and then we look at Besta Pizza, and it's got one of those symbols. Now, why would you do that? And Jimmy Comet, James Alefantis, Comet Ping Pong infamy, here's an Instagram post. New seating area, procedure for your younger guests. And there's a picture of a girl who appears to be, I don't know, about 3 or 4 years old, and she is bound to a table with masking tape. Pretty funny, huh? Pretty funny. Here are just a few of the more institutional coincidences involved in this story. One of the men on the small list of people found liking photos like this one on these individuals' Instagram accounts is Arun Rao, the U.S. Attorney Chief charged with prosecuting cases of child pornography. Besta Pizza, the business whose logo so closely resembled the Little Boy Lover logo, is owned by Andrew Klein, who is one of the 4 attorneys in the Human Trafficking Prosecution Unit of the Department of Justice. Isn't it just a little unusual that someone that high up in a human trafficking division would fail to notice the symbolism? In yet another coincidence, Lauren Silsby Gaylor is the former director of the New Life Children's Refuge in Haiti. It is a matter of public record that she was caught, prosecuted, and sent to jail while in that role for trying to abduct dozens of children, most of whom had homes and families. The main lawyer paid to represent Silsby Gaylor, president of the Sephardic Jewish community in the Dominican Republic, was himself suspected of involvement in human trafficking. I wrote about this years ago. It's coming up again. I'm going to talk about it again. Jimmy Comet's, James Alefantis, his Instagram account. There's a picture of him. It looks rather sweet. He's holding a baby who's looking at the camera. And Jimmy Comet is looking down. You can't see his eyes. There is, strangely though, a rather large necklace, a beaded necklace, which is around the man's neck and also around the child's neck. And he has written hashtag chicken lovers. A chicken lover, a chicken hawk, is an adult man who is looking for barely pubescent or younger children to have sex with. The writer at UN says the disturbing bit is that the photo uses the tag hashtag chicken lovers, and chicken lover is in fact an established term to refer to a pedophile, someone who loves children, chicken, which is also unambiguously an established term to refer to underage children. I have heard this term going back to the 1970s. I used to know a lot of taxi drivers, and you find out some interesting things if you know taxi drivers. For instance, Which of the prominent people in your city are chicken hawks? One of them, it turns out, was a man called Ron Basford, who was a Canadian cabinet minister under Pierre Trudeau at one point, one of the most powerful men in Canada. And let's see whether the other fellow has still died, has died yet. And if he is, then I can name him. Another, let's see, this is, okay, I'll just bear with me just a minute here. Yes, Laurier Lapierre. He was a Canadian senator. He was the co-host of the legendary show This Hour Has 7 Days. Also a chicken hawk. How about that, huh? You know, I learned, you know, in journalism through other sources, I learned a lot of what might be called secret information. And it led me to conclude that besides the official history, there is a secret history, which is just as important. Here's a picture of Tony Podesta with a dead man missing a head, sculpture, like a famous picture of one of Jeffrey Dahmer's victims. Podesta, his favorite artist is Bill Yana Djurdjevic, whose art heavily features images of children in BDSM-esque positions in large showers. Here's one with a row of young girls in a shower with their hands behind their backs in a position that suggests bondage. And the pictures also suggest that the children have been physically brutalized. Here's young with a young boy. Here's one with a young boy in a shower, tied up in the air with his hands over his head. This is the point that I made at the time was just based on what we know publicly about James Alefantis, who was named one of the most 50 most important people in Washington, Gentleman's Quarterly, and the writer at UNS leapt to the same conclusion as I did, which was, what? He owns a pizza parlor. How does that make you important? What's going on here? Well, his one of his ex-boyfriends was David Brock, who used to write for the American Spectator and wrote the famous essay, The Real Anita Hill. And then later he stopped being right-wing and became left-wing when he started sleeping with a man who worked for Hillary Clinton. Precedents for Pizzagate. This is also from UNS. Marc Dutroux, Belgian pedophile, sadist, and serial killer with friends in high places. Just look him up on Wikipedia and find out how a pedophile became the most important person in the country of Belgium. And when people say to me, I'm not making any claims regarding human trafficking and the like, I'm just dealing with information which is in the public domain. However, when people say to you, oh, Pizzagate is completely outrageous, you're stupid, you should be allowed to speak, just mention to them. Mention to them Marc Dutroux in Belgium. Also, you could mention to them Sir Jimmy Savile, who was so influential. In Britain, he was given hospitals to run. Seriously, he was given hospitals to run. He was abusing children for close to half a century. Everyone knew about it. The police knew about it. BBC knew about it. Everyone knew about it. Who? Prince Charles, best friend of Jimmy Savile. Also another best friend, Margaret Thatcher. Margaret Thatcher invited Jimmy Savile to Chequers, which is her country residence, every year for Christmas. And she tried to get a knighthood for him for year after year after year, and the civil servant said no, 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 no. And finally they gave up, and he got his nightclub. He got his knighthood, not his nightclub. If you look at the Pedophile Information Exchange, or PI, as in pizza pie, and how it was thoroughly integrated into the Britain's Foreign Office. No, it turns out that a lot of these conspiracies turn out to be true. Why was Jimmy Savile protected for so long? Why was Cyril Smith of the Liberal Party protected for so long. Ron Unz has a very interesting theory about this, which is that deeply compromised people, deeply depraved people, they are talent spotted at an early age because they were people who will do as told. And he mentions in this regard Dennis or Denny Hastert, who rose to be the leader of the Republicans in the House of Representatives. He was a fat dolt, and yet he kept rising and rising and rising. Everyone knew that he was fiddling. He was a high school wrestling coach. Everyone knew that he was fiddling with his male students, but he kept rising and rising and rising and rising. And this is a man who obviously is not going to make trouble. Let's see. Pizzagate images banned from YouTube. And here's another one of Jimmy Comet's postings. Karis James loves spending euros. And there's a picture of a baby holding hundreds or thousands of euros in notes. And as babies are wont to do, it is chewing on a bunch of their notes. Jimmy Comet, James Alefantis, also posted a picture of a baby with a price on the baby, because that's the sort of thing a normal man would do. All these people rushed to the defense of Jimmy Comet, James Alefantis, the child lover. Yeah, that's what his name means. Wears the t-shirt, loves children. David Frum was one of those who rushed to the defense of James Alefantis, talking about how he made a point of taking one of his children, one of his daughters, to Comet Ping Pong. I've seen the pictures. I've examined in detail Comet Ping Pong, and it looks like a dungeon. Adults are encouraged to bring children in there while they eat and drink alcohol. And who thought that was a good idea? Because this place makes a big deal about, their selection of alcohol, right? I was just thinking there must be a lot of conversations there, as in The Shining. Danny, I'd never hurt you, right, Danny? But no, it looks like a dungeon. Children do not like dungeons. Go to McDonald's if you want to know what children like. They like lurid colors. And of course, it's famous for its weird, disgusting, depraved art. Why isn't that sufficient? Why isn't this sort of thing sufficient to destroy the reputations of people like Alefantis and the Podesta brothers? Who buys artwork which fetishizes the torture of children? Respectable people, I guess, and we're not in any position to criticize them. Starbucks stops advertising on all social media while Pepsi joins the growing list of companies boycotting Facebook as pressure grows on sites to crack down on hate speech. And so it begins. What is this, round 12 or whatever? Let's see. It's July this week. So August, September, October, November. We're 4 months away and a little bit from the election. And Silicon Valley has decided that dissenting views will not be heard on social media. Yeah, a whole bunch of these companies, including Coca-Cola, has got involved. What business is it of theirs? What are they afraid of? Honestly, President Trump was suspended from Twitch, citing hateful content. This is owned by Amazon, which, of course, also owns the Washington Post. And two activists showed up in front of one of Jeff Bezos's properties today, and they had a guillotine, which they had got from somewhere or constructed, and they were talking about the revolution coming for Jeff Bezos. How about that, huh? How about that? I've been warning these people. Antifa sets up a guillotine outside of Jeff Bezos' apartment complex in Washington, D.C. and says, quote, when they become threatened and we have no voice, the knives come out, unquote. Bernard Brightson commented, Zuckerberg, Bezos, and Dorsey just don't get it. Straight, rich, white men are going to the gulags and worse. So Stefan Molyneux was kicked off today. Richard Spencer was kicked off today. American Renaissance was kicked off out of whatever they were still allowed to be in. And this all happened within 12 hours. Seems coordinated. Someone asked, Jason Steiner asked, why do you look so much like Ed Harris? I don't know. Is it the lack of hair? I mean, I still have my hair. It's cut pretty short. Actually, Ed Harris is a handsome guy. He's better looking than I am, so I'll take that as a compliment. Cigarette and fedora needed. I can't smoke in here. I used to wear hats. I used to wear hats in the, late 1970s. And I discovered that people do not like hats. I got into a lot of trouble for wearing hats. People would yell insults on the street or, scream homo, stuff like that, because I wore a fedora. Now, I wasn't, one of those jerks that wears a fedora over a T-shirt. I was wearing a suit and, an overcoat. I looked pretty good in those days, pretty sharp. I found out that people do not like hats. I went to a party, wore a hat. Someone set the hat on fire. That is to say, put a lit cigarette in the brim till it burned through the hat. And I decided, okay, I get the message. I'm not wearing hats anymore. Facebook advertising boycott to go global as organizers demand social media giant remove hate speech after company shares dropped $56 billion in one day and Coke and Starbucks pulled ads. The Stop Hate for Profit campaign will now work on getting European companies to join the boycott and urge regulators to take a hard stand on Facebook. More than 160 companies have already agreed to not buy ads on the world's largest social media platform during the month of July, as called for by the campaign. Alan Bakari says the left takes revenge on Facebook for not censoring enough. Now, of course, a whole bunch of people like Diamond and Silk have been banned. All these people have been banned from Facebook. But no, Facebook is the right loves Facebook. They're very good at this, It's absolute nonsense, of course. It's absolute nonsense. But again, this indicates what George Sorel called the power of myth. Oh, I see the color is back to normal. GSP says Antifa are the charismatic LARPer branch of the lib establishment. I don't know that there is a liberal establishment anymore because liberalism it's disappeared. When Nancy Pelosi says that the Republican Party is trying to get away with the murder of George Floyd, it's obvious that they are not liberals. I mean, it's not just that the statement is untrue. The Republican Party has nothing to do with the prosecution of the 4 policemen involved, and they all have been prosecuted. But it's the outrageousness of it, this attempt to poison the well, to incite a race war in America. The old liberals didn't like the idea of a race war. And one of the reasons is because they thought the race war would be, whites attacking blacks and not the other way around. But now the white people aren't fighting back, except for those two brave, the couple in St. Louis, and there are a few other examples. Alex Large says paranoid people latch onto the idea that pedophiles use terms like cheese pizza and discredit serious people who are interested in covering trafficking gangs. No, I disagree, for the reason that if you look through the Podesta emails, and of course there are many thousands of them, there's this obsession with pizza. And I'll tell you something, which maybe no one else has mentioned this before. Oh, yeah, there's an episode of Peep Show, which has been withdrawn from Netflix because Jeremy wears blackface. He wears blackface because his crazy, sexy girlfriend wants to play out this depraved racial fantasy, and Jeremy is just, he'll do anything sexually, but this goes too far for him. But if you've known the woman that I'm talking about, well, you might understand why he went along with it. But no, they have removed that. But Jeremy was also chasing this older woman who was in an on-again, off-again marriage. And so he shows up at the door pretending to be delivering pizza. And the woman says, do I like this? Do I look like the sort of person who eats pizza? And I suspect this would be the attitude of the Podesta brothers. Pizza is pro food for the most part. And so here you have all these Washington, D.C. high rollers, the type of people who wouldn't think twice about a $200 or $300 bottle of wine with their meal. Oh, they're obsessed with pizza. Are they? I don't think so. Danny Rose says, fair enough, but you keep adding pizza restaurants, pizza parlors as if the venue alone discredits suspicion, which it doesn't. Again, how does a man who owns a pizza parlor become one of Washington's power brokers? And again, just based on what we know publicly, the whole Comet ping pong outfit, it's just absolutely disgusting. Who says those kind of things about babies? Who would say such things? Terrible, terrible people. Let's see. Alex Large says, I don't understand the need to grasp at straws and invent crazy fictions about systematic child rape happening in pizza restaurants. I never made that claim. Never made that claim. I'm just saying that what we know about Alefanta should have been sufficient for him to be driven out of a polite society and Comet ping pong to be razed to the ground. But that's not what happened. And we have people like David Frum rushing to its defense. Bernie Ecclestone, former boss, Formula One. He's an old white man, very old. He's also kind of crazy, but he's very rich. And I always like to see this, that he's not apologizing. It's not my fault, I am white, he says. He previously said a lot of black people are more racist than white people. Where's the lie? Where's the lie, people? And so now he's being raked over the coals for this. But again, one of the advantages of being a very old man who's very rich is that you don't have to care. And now there's this suggestion that he's going to be banned from Formula One races. But, Lewis Hamilton was upset. One would have think that, Lewis Hamilton, given his successes, would be a little hardier, but he seems like a very weak man. He seems quite weak. Indeed, there's a student at the University of Kansas called Jaden McNeil, president and founder of America First Students, and he's in big trouble because he made a joke about George Floyd, that the hideously ugly felon who is the patron saint of home invasions now. And he writes, my account was just locked again. Checked my Telegram, and I was forced to delete the original tweet about George Floyd. Unreal. And the tweet went something like, congratulations to George Floyd on a month of sobriety. And people were saying, oh, it's such a terrible joke. It's a pretty good joke, actually. But the University of Kansas would like to expel him, but they'd have to find a reason other than they don't like his joke. Oh, it's racist. Oh, how is it racist? Exactly. Because it's about a dead black man? If it were about a dead white man, would it be acceptable then? But Jaden McNeil is not cucking. He is standing tall. So maybe it is the Zoomers who will save us. From CNBC, Trump fans are flocking to the social media app Parler. Its CEO is begging liberals to join them. They're up to 1.5 million people. I was thinking about it. I haven't gone there yet. The difficulty is that the action is still largely on Twitter, and I spend too much time on Twitter as it is, and I really wouldn't like to spend twice as much time on social media. Perhaps this is the point. DOJ and state attorney generals prepare antitrust case against Google, but search bias is missing. State attorneys general met with the Justice Department on Friday to make preparations for an anticipated antitrust case against Google. However, sources say that search bias, which is crucial to Google's ability to sway elections and control the flow of political information, is not yet a major part of the DOJ's case. Political report on the gathering of state attorneys general, and the Justice Department ahead of the meeting on Friday. Its report suggests that the focus is currently on the criticisms of Google from its corporate competitors, namely its dominance of the digital ads market and its alleged tendency to favor its own products and services. Meanwhile, Attorney General Barr is pursuing hundreds of cases against these Antifa or Antifa-related idiots pulling down statues, setting buildings on fire. And of course, they cannot help but film everything on their smartphones and then post it to the internet, which it makes it much, much easier for law enforcement officials to get convictions. Now, okay, I've dragged back to this ugly subject of pedophilia again. You may remember BuzzFeed got involved with slapping down Zero Hedge about China, the China virus. This is a very weird story. Almost 5 short months ago, journalist Ryan Broderick was the envy of his fake news peers. The BuzzFeed senior reporter had just written a hit piece against Zero Hedge, slamming us over the, quote, conspiracy theory, unquote, that COVID-19 may have emerged from a lab in Wuhan, China, and claiming that we doxed one of their scientists. Hours later, we were summarily kicked off Twitter, a ban which has since been reversed after the social media giant admitted they were in error. Meanwhile, the lab origin conspiracy theory has gained widespread support and is now the focus of several international investigations into the CCP lab. Do you remember that? Conspiracy theory, conspiracy theory, conspiracy theory. Oh, apparently it's being seriously investigated now. Are you people who are mewling about conspiracy theories, are you going to apologize? No. Nope, nope, nope. Less than 48 hours after our February Twitter ban, internet sleuths discovered that Broderick had previously blogged about pedophilic fantasies involving young boys. Why he wasn't fired on the spot is anyone's guess. Perhaps former BuzzFeed editor-in-chief Ben Smith, now with the Pedophilia, a Disorder, Not a Crime promoting New York Times, as a soft spot for Ryan. Broderick had tweeted in 2012, Mr. President, can you please pass legislation legally defining the difference between us good-natured hebophiles, I think he means ephebophiles, and amoral pedophiles? On Friday, Broderick was fired for plagiarism after BuzzFeed's new editor-in-chief, Mark Schoofs, published a note to our readers detailing 11 instances where Broderick lifted content from other publications without attribution, going back to 2013, including his hit piece against Zero Hedge. It's their pedo sympathizer, Broderick. Apparently, he would just copy and paste from AP articles. This is from Rick McHalney. This fellow had said, I want to be, and he put it up on social media, okay? I want to be an erotic children's photographer. I want to be the Andy Warhol of erotic children's photography. How do people get away with saying things like this? How do they get away with it? Well, what this suggests to me is that there are powerful people who are pedophiles or who have been suborned, and so they protect pedophiles. I don't see any other way around this. I really don't. Okay, tomorrow, I'm running out of time here. Eric Kaufman, who's the author of White Shift, is a very long article on Quillette called The Second The Great Awakening and the Second American Revolution, in which he suggests that America might not survive what's going on now, that America itself might even be renamed. And there's a long, although not so long, piece by Matt Taibbi on a Substack about this ridiculous book called White Fragility. But meanwhile, Ice Cube tells Jake Tapper, watch your mouth, after he slams anti-Semitic misogynist Louis Farrakhan. Farrakhan is a vile anti-alphabet people, anti-Semitic misogynist. Why is a Fox channel airing his propaganda, tweeted Tapper, after it was announced that the Fox Soul Network would be airing Farrakhan's message to America this week. Fox has a soul network? Really? Yeah, so Ice Cube retweeted back, watch your mouth. I will note that Ice Cube is black and Jake Tapper is white. And I'm kind of noticing a trend here, which I think we're going to see more of, just straight up Jew hatred from blacks, and not just from blacks either, because blacks have long held a grudge against Jews, alleging that Jews exploited them, particularly in their neighborhoods, for decades. Of course, the Jews left the inner city, 50 years ago or close to that. But no, I think we're going to get to see more and more of this. And again, I've been warning for some time that for elite Jews to insist that they are not white is not going to redound to their advantage. Hey, you want to hear a great conspiracy theory? Sir Keith Starmer, who is now the new leader of the Labour Party, faces down Labour's hard left at Crunch meeting. Leader refuses to bow to Jeremy Corbyn, Diane Abbott, and John McDonnell. Their calls to reinstate Rebecca Long Bailey. Okay, so why is Rebecca Long Bailey, who ran for the leadership of the party, was previously in the shadow cabinet? Why is she in trouble now? Why has she been sacked? It's not because of her face, even as offensive as that might be. It's because she was praising an English actress called Maxine Peake. And Maxine Peake is putting it about that, you remember George Floyd, where this all began? And that particular hold, the submission hold? Well, you know where the Minneapolis police learned that? The Israelis. The Israeli army taught them. Yeah, that's what they're saying. That's what they're saying in the Labour Party. And yeah, apparently Pizzagate is crazy, huh? Just this intersectionality. It's going to destroy the left, and not a moment too soon. Because, you know, there's not really all that many black people. They're 14% or 13% of the American population. They're 3.5% of the Canadian population. I'm just guessing that they're, 6, 7% of the British population? But no, they have to be in charge of everything, and everyone must, grovel before them. This is from the Mail. Priti Patel attacks Labour MPs over Black Lives Matter criticism, accusing them of holding racist views because the Tory minister does not conform to a stereotypical view of what an ethnic minority woman should stand for. Yes, I'm a Hindu. I have suffered too. Don't ignore my suffering. How dare you say I know nothing about racism? Nah, I'm afraid, Priti Patel, you are going to lose that argument, particularly when your name is Patel, which is not low caste Hindu. Okay, I'm not going to eat at McDonald's anymore. I've made this pledge in the past several times, but now it's for good. This is from Breitbart. McDonald's has changed its Twitter display name to Amplifying Black Voices, adding a profile banner that lists Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, Alton Sterling, Botham Jean, Tatiana Jefferson, Ahmaud Arbery, and George Floyd as victims of racism and systemic oppression. The brand's Twitter banner reads, Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, blah, blah, blah. He was one of us. She was one of us. They were all one of us. We see them in our customers. Okay, we see them. We see them in our crew members. We see them in our franchisees. And that is why the entire McDonald's family grieves. It's why we stand for them and any other victims of systemic oppression and violence. Today, we stand with Black communities across America, which is why we're donating to the National Urban League and to the NAACP. We do not tolerate inequity, injustice, or racism. McDonald's is partnering with local courts and the justice system. We're sending young men to us instead of to prison. Wow, it's like McDonald's is the new indentured servitude. I thought this was fake at first because there's a well-known meme come from a well-known cartoon. You know, how does this help us sell burgers? Burgers? McDonald's tweeted a large, angry Black trans woman with a message. Black trans women have a very simple message: stop killing us. McDonald's shared a quote asking about the volume of Black storytelling in video games. Everything has to be Black. Everything has to be Black. McDonald's writes, Black storytelling is powerful. Is it? Is it now? Because it seems kind of one note. But how many of those stories do you see in video games? I encourage kids to protest like me and use their voices to stop racism. What was this kid, like 10 years old? Why am I interested? Oh, and here's a Black woman who I do not recognize. Oh, I guess her name is Melissa. Melissa R. Butler. The reality is we are beauty. We are the culture. How much more of this ethnocentrism can we take? Seriously. I'm going to, oh yes, largely Black protesters in St. Louis, Missouri, were defacing, attacking a statue of King Louis IX, King Saint Louis IX, the friend and patron of Thomas Aquinas. They're talking about pulling down the statue, of pulling down the cathedral, of renaming St. Louis. A young priest very valiantly was defending the monument and found out that, of course, the protesters had no idea who King Louis IX was, and they thought that he was the scourge of Africans, so sub-Saharan Africans. It's easy enough to laugh at this idiocy, but you know, it's cumulative. It's cumulative. Minneapolis council members who voted to abolish cops get private security. This is from the New York Post, and I'm seeing people in the news here, and I'm looking at their faces, looking at what they're dressed in, how they're presenting themselves, and I'm thinking, this can't be real. This is City Council Vice President Andrea, or perhaps she pronounces it Andrea Jenkins, and she's okay, transgender activist. Yeah, okay, just frightening looking. 3 members of the Minneapolis City Council who voted to eliminate the local police force are being protected by a private security detail that costs taxpayers $4,500 a day. News of the arrangement broke Friday, the same day the council voted 12-0 to abolish the Minneapolis Police Department. My concern is the large number of white nationalists in our city and other threatening communications I've been receiving. The city has spent $63,000 on rent-a-cops for Jenkins and fellow council members Philippe Cunningham and Alondra Cano during the last 3 weeks after the 3 said they'd received threats. Wow. Is that offer available to anyone? I've been receiving threats. Where are my rent-a-cops? Of course, you may have seen that the murder rate in Chicago and New York is just off the scale. It's just off the scale. But Black Lives Matter. Not in the inner city, they don't. Clearly not. I'll just wrap this up quickly. Look, people have been asking, when is this COVID-19 scare the sanitary dictatorship, how long is it going to last to? And I can tell you definitively, and you can take this to the bank, November the 3rd. That's election day. Here's the plan. The plan is that in the states that can get away with it, voting in person will be forbidden. That it will be mail balloting, and thus the elections will be fixed. Now, you will say, this is only going to happen in Democratic states. That's true. That is true. Some of the states run by Democrats did vote for Trump, though, in the last election. But in any event, you will recall that Hillary Clinton got more popular votes than Trump did. So people were arguing that makes her the real president. No, that's not how it works. She lost by the rules, electoral college rules. But the plan here, I think, is assuming they don't win the electoral college, is to run up an enormous victory in popular votes through harvested ballots in blue states, such that no, Joe Biden is the real president. He got millions more votes. Donald Trump is disqualified for being a Russian agent and killing 150,000 Americans with COVID-19, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the idea is that Trump will be cowed. He will not accept inauguration. And if he doesn't, there'll be an insurrection, or there'll be dozens of insurrections all across America. I just... Look, there's no doubt in my mind that this is simply a question of basic scientific ignorance amongst the media. The number of COVID-19 cases is soaring. Yes? Okay. Oh, doesn't that terrify you? No. Because the only people who were listed as COVID-19 patients were those who demonstrated symptoms. The people who are testing positive now are not demonstrating symptoms. The hospitals are not full. The death rate is falling. But no, you see, we've surrendered our rights, and the governor of California says, okay, the bars are closed now. Oh, you know what, in years to come, what, it's a heavy flu season? No, I'm closing the bars. Oh, there seems to be a lot of mosquitoes about. I'm closing the bars. Oh, the tide of racism seems to have reached a recent peak. I'm closing the bars. I'm closing everything. I'm punishing all you bad people. This is just, well, we let them get away with it. We let them get away with it. Cuomo, the love gov, who's dishing it 24/7, as his brother Fredo said, he trolls Trump with mask Photoshop during virus news conference. Put a mask on it. Yes, everyone must wear a mouth diaper. The COVID-19 hustle has been busted, but this is their last chance to humiliate us all, and to give those people who like to humiliate themselves in order to virtue signal, let them have their moment in the sun. Carol Markowitz, who writes for the New York Post, there's an angry tweet on the subject of Governor Death on June 27th. Imagine thinking this is journalism. How did New York do it? New York has been able to beat coronavirus because of, wait for it, all the dead people. We are sailing into COVID containment because so many New Yorkers who had it fucking died. Our response was trash. This is trash. Chris Chilitza wrote, I talked to Andrew Cuomo yesterday about coronavirus. He said, we tested both theories. We have the evidence, the numbers. It's irrefutable. Why don't we pause and recognize the undeniable reality of the situation? Well, Cuomo's gone on the offense. He is responsible, directly responsible for the deaths of thousands of people, but he has posited himself as the good guy. And for the time being, he is getting away with it. I sincerely hope he ends up in prison, because that's where he belongs. One final look at the chat. Danny Rose says, people who are suspicious about pizza and hot dog being code words have good enough reason. Why do you keep insinuating that's conspiratorial when they didn't choose those words? Brandon Smith, nothing like that could ever happen in Washington, D.C. GSP says Antifa are the charismatic LARPer branch of the liberal establishment. Again, I don't think there's a liberal establishment anymore. Brandon Smith says every revolution needs highly motivated, misguided types to carry out the dirty work. And they work for free. Well, we don't know whether they work for free. We know that Soros was paying for these protesters back in Baltimore and Ferguson. Also, a shooting today at an Amazon warehouse in Florida. Does anyone ever buy anything they saw in an ad? I have. I would have thought that most people have. Well, I don't know. Again, as has been pointed out by many people, there are symbols, various occult symbols used by pedophiles. The FBI has come up with a list of them, and we see these pizza places associated with them. Why would they do that? This could not possibly be a coincidence. Could not. Now, it's possible that these people are simply being ironic. You know, again, on Peep Show, Super Hands, Super Hands and Jeremy had come into possession of a pub, an actual pub, and a crazy woman had given it to them, and they ignored the fact that she was clearly crazy and not in a position to do this, but they accepted it for a while. And then, of course, they got into these arguments about what to call it and what it should be served and what the decor should be. And Super Hands decided that it must be called Free the Pedos. He was making some sort of a statement. It was unclear. He also insisted that all the refuse that was on the floor should be left there, including like an abandoned washing machine and the like. And no, they were just going to serve organic scrumpy. And Jeremy says, look, you have to serve at least one lager and nuts. People love lager and nuts. And Super Hands says, people love Coldplay and voted for Hitler. Ashley Bravo says, our conservative church is the last bastion and stand of implicit white identity in North America. I don't really think so. I don't really think so. Because there's no, I mean, it's not, the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church, certainly, they're not white institutions. I mean, they're universal institutions. A lot of these people worship the altar of irony, so that is possible. Yeah, it could be. It could be, but, you know, strangely enough, in recent years, we've been told there are some things you just don't joke about, right? And I would have thought that the sexual exploitation of children, even babies, is something that you don't joke about. YT says, I've been taking a bus without a mask. I haven't been abused for it yet. Well, I'm glad to hear it. Walrus Libertarian says, so many people still think death is around the corner. Well, again, they don't seem to understand numbers or any number above 1,000. If the number of cases is soaring, but the death rate is not, what does that tell you? It tells you that the fatality rate of this disease is very small indeed. The CDC was talking about 0.26%, but it appears that it is even lower than that. Anyway, that's the show for today. I'll be back on the air tomorrow at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. Thank you all for listening or viewing or both. If you would like to support the show, and I would greatly appreciate that at this time, my PayPal address is kevin_grace@hotmail.com. Again, kevin_grace@hotmail.com. And I'll leave you with this. At this time of social isolation and civilizational collapse, I do dearly hope that you, my dear listeners and viewers, manage to find some genuine human connection in order to ease the burden. Good night.